Today I'd like to talk about the Toll House Jail. I said in a previous video that I would revisit this building once I'd had a chance to look into it, and I've been going round and round in circles looking at this, and I'll show you why. It's said to be one of the oldest buildings in Great Yarmouth. It was built 800 years ago by a rich merchant who used it as his home, and we know this because there is no paperwork, we have no name for the rich merchant, the building fails to appear on any map prior to 1800, but it was interlinked with the rows, and we are told that the rows are equally as old. So the rows were so called because their entrances were down alleyways. The rows were structured to have an arch over them, and as you moved down the road there would be entrances to the houses. So the entrances weren't at the front, they were down the alleyways. There's no known date for the building of the rows, but they are said to have been here before the building of the town wall, which was in the 1300s, and they were accommodated by the poor. So here's an example of one of the rows, and you can see how it sort of arches over and interlinks with the buildings either side of it, but the doorways would have been down here. So the rows, we're told, were built of whatever materials could be found, because you've got to remember these are poor people, these are peasants that are building these. And this is an example today of the original brickwork that's down the rows. So you can see you've got pebbles and you've got different sized bricks, and obviously some of these are more modern bricks, but nevertheless, seriously, historians think this is some 800 years plus old wall. Today the rows have been restructured, so the side entrances have been blocked up and the front facing entrances are mostly shops now. So if we look at this picture, this side, you can see a very poor job of blocking up a doorway here, and so the doorways have been opened to the front now, and these are all shops. But what strikes me as odd is that in this restructuring they decided they'd put in a few bay windows as well, which makes absolutely no sense. You can see another row just in the background over there, so there's a lot of them, and really they're just alleyways between the shops, and there is evidence that there used to be doorways there at some point. So having been around for over 800 years, I thought I'd try and have a look and see what did the front of these rows used to look like before they had entrances there. And I found there are no images or sketches or depictions of how the rows looked without their current frontage. So this map dates back to around 1300, 1400, and the rows are facing frontwards. I mean, if you look at this, you can see that these are little doorways. So when the hell did they become the rows where there were no front doorways? So it strikes me that these were always just houses, and if they had doors down the side, maybe it was just a side entrance. It's crazy. And also on this map there's no sign of our rich merchant's home at the toll house. So where is it? I mean, it should be on this sort of grass verge bit here. So I'm not suggesting that it wasn't there. I'm not saying that the map is accurate. I'm just saying, where the hell are the historians getting their stories from when they've got absolutely nothing whatsoever to back up what they're saying? Anyway, while we're on this picture, if you can spend a moment at some time considering what these sort of gridded cage-like things are. I know it's a part of the structure of the mouth going through from the sea into the river, but I'm not quite sure why they've got this sort of cage effect. I think I might know, but yeah, we'll discuss that on another video, and I'd just like your thoughts if you have any. So the toll house, it's undated, but notice that it is attached to a row. You can see this is the toll house, and it's just been built at exactly the same time as this row of houses. You can see that this is a row because if you look down there, there's your archway, and you should find down there that there are these doorways leading into people's houses. Looks to me like there's doorways on the front, but this is the 1800s now when this is taken. So there's a lot of restructuring. For a start, notice that this is a square window up here, and this looks like peeling paint or something. It certainly doesn't look like the Flintstones. I don't mean the cartoon, I mean the stones that are made of flint that are on the current building. So yeah, and this as well, the railing here, and there's no rail here. So I will come back to this anyway. This is the side of the toll house, so we're to believe that this rich merchant cobbled his house together with the rows of the poor, because he couldn't possibly have built his house here without having built the whole row of the houses. And you can see this is today. I took this photo recently, and you can see quite clearly that a part of the structure was the rest of the row of houses. And this is a clearer picture where you can see that alleyway that had a sort of ceiling to it. You've got the posts there that were supporting it, and you've got the brickwork. So it's definitely attached to that toll house, no question about it. It's just a close-up. So when and why did the detail and the arched windows appear? So we've got these arched windows here instead of the square ones, and of course we've got no detail here, but we've got detail here. We've got this grid down here that's not here. I mean, it's an awful lot to have changed, and the question is, when did it change? Because it seems to me that this more current building was deliberately made to look old with these windows. It wasn't originally like that. So we're told that this iron gate here, and I know you're all thinking, oh, that's definitely a mud flooder. No, the iron gate, we're told, is so that people could throw food to prisoners. That's what it was there for, because the prisoners were down in the cells below, but they were locked up in these. So how the hell were they supposed to get the food that was being thrown down through the grill? It's crazy. So this is the inside of the building. That looks particularly old, and maybe that's the sole thing that's old on this, but it looks like it belongs in a kind of church-like building, really. Now, Bob from Heritage, he told me a story, and the reason that I'm looking into this building so closely is because Bob from Heritage told me, we know that the ground around the toll house has risen because some French prisoners were put into cells and they managed to breach the walls, and they got out and they ran away. And he said if the cells were underground, how could they have got out and run away? You know, they'd have been surrounded by mud. So it was Bob's opinion that the ground level had risen around the toll house. So Bob told me there was evidence of that, and I suspect that this is the evidence. Now, when I asked the staff that were present at the time, they looked at me like I was talking a completely different language. As far as they're concerned, it's built with a basement. They don't know anything about French people who escaped. The irony is, Bob has also worked here. He was a curator at this particular museum for a number of years. He now works in the library that's attached to it around the back. Anyway, so it became a museum with a library to the rear in 1880. But this is a bit of history before that. So it says, you are standing in one of the oldest houses in East Anglia. Part of the building might have been built as early as 1190, so they don't actually know. The toll house was probably once a private house, so again they don't actually know. And this great chamber could have been the main living quarters to a rich merchant. but they don't actually know that. The house has changed considerably over the centuries. And where's your evidence? It later became the town's courthouse and prison, so very little remains to tell us how the house was used, or if indeed it was a house at all. We do know that it was entered via an outside staircase, and other rooms for sleeping, storage and cooking have now been demolished. You can see the doorway to one of the other rooms by the platform, and that was the doorway that I showed you, the really old one. Well, I'm telling you that there is another staircase in this building. In fact, there's two other staircases in this building. One is a stone spiral staircase, and one is a wooden staircase going higher, and they're both inside the building. So why they're saying that the original staircase was outside the house, I have no idea. Anyway, it goes on. So we've got this fictitious merchant, and now they're going to give him a fictitious family. The family probably ate in this hall with their guests. Oh, and so we've got a whole family, guests, merchants, and all of it's made up, all of it. And the merchant may well have conducted business here, or maybe he didn't, or maybe he didn't even exist. It was originally quite dark and gloomy. Again, evidence, and difficult to heat. Really? How do you know? The family would have spent a great deal of time in their private rooms, which have not survived. So you don't even know if the rooms existed, and certainly you don't know if the family existed. It's crazy. It's bizarre. Merchants stored their goods on ground floor and in the basement. So again, they think the basement was built for storing goods. The hold or prison below was originally a storeroom. We do not think the toll house was used as a private house for long. They don't know if it was a private house at all. What are you talking about? Our records show... What records? Show me your records. Anyway, our records show it was hired by the borough in 1333. Well, that's absolute rubbish. The borough wouldn't hire anything, they'd just take it. And the borough may well have rented it before this date. The basement could have been used as a prison, and this room as a courtroom, or maybe not. In 1362 it was owned by Agatha de Stalem, and in 1480 by Ada March, who continued to rent it to the borough. Well, this is absolute rubbish. I mean, it's crazy. Women weren't allowed to own property. Maybe the odd spinster, only under certain conditions. Women just, they had no rights then. Unless the whole thing is a lie, maybe. Maybe they did have rights. Maybe they were as equal as we consider ourselves now. We do not know if these women were merchants, so they were high-class businesswomen now, or whether they owned this property as an investment property. Jesus Christ. And used the rents as a form of income. We'll see. But we know it was attached anyway to another building. Oh, we've gone back. We know it was attached to another building because it's very clear from outside it was attached to the rows. And this is the picture that comes with the story. It's not attached to anything there. I mean, it only takes one glance. You only have to pop outside and you can see it was attached to something. So why draw this as an idea of how it used to be? It had to be built with the rows. The wooden beams are going right the way through all the buildings. It's crazy. And also, I think we've got the... well, it's difficult to tell, but I don't think we've got the grate there. We certainly haven't got all the decoration, and we've got this extra wall coming out there as well. Anyway, it's through this slit that I could see the spiral stone staircase. It was very well worn, and maybe next time I need to take someone who's a little bit taller than I am to take the photos. Anyway, you can see where the lintel used to be. And that shows it was indeed a square window. See, it was a square window. Now, this is really funny. it says the Toll House as it appeared in 1819 in John Preston's picture of Yarmouth. Notice the dormer windows in the roof and the troll cart disappearing down the road. So there's the troll cart going down the road, there's the dormer windows. Don't notice the fact that we've got square windows and it's attached to something, because the crazy thing is this picture is in the toll house itself alongside the other picture showing something completely different. You know, come on guys, get your story straight. So this is a sketch in the early 1800s and this is a photo taken in the early 1800s. Does it bear any resemblance at all? We've got arch windows, square windows. Look at the state of this. This looks pristine and new. This looks as old as the Ark. And yet they're both proclaimed to be the same time. Anyway, in 1939 the toll house got bombed. All the museum pieces that were in it, because as I say, in the late 1800s it turned into a museum and a library next door, and the vast library that was attached to the toll house, it all gets destroyed, all that information destroyed in the bomb blast, and that's in 1939. Or was it 1939? Because BBC Norfolk Coast, on the 1st of August 2005, they say, a historical character welcomes toll house visitors. Toll House welcomes museum visitors to the toll house after it was bombed in 1941. So, okay, maybe it was 1941, but then Norfolk Heritage talk about the Toll House Library and how it was destroyed in 1940. And I've gone backwards and forwards, and this is just a small example. They don't even know when it was bombed. This is another story, Sarah Martin. Sarah Martin has got her own room at the jailhouse, and because she was a frequent visitor. So there's a lot about her in the jailhouse. And Sarah Martin was born in 1791. She died 15th of October 1843. She was a dressmaker and she spent much of her time encouraging prisoners to repent. Anyway, in an undated ebook online called A Yacht Voyage Around England by W.H.G. Kingston, it speaks of Sarah Martin. And he says, in olden times, prisoners were wont to be chained. Sufferings of these unfortunate persons stirred up the heart of a Christian woman, Sarah Martin, residing in Yarmouth. Though compelled to support herself as a dressmaker, she devoted much of her time, as did John Howard and Elizabeth Fry, to visiting her suffering fellow creatures. So basically, when this book was written, Sarah Martin was a story of old. This book goes on to describe her death, and when the hour of her departure was come, her exclamation was, "Thank God, thank God." Problem is that if Sarah's death is in 1843, and that's old history to this guy who's writing it, then we're looking at the book being written probably in the early 1900s, very late 1800s maybe, but this is the sketch he drew of the toll house. So again, if this is the early 1900s and it looks exactly the same as it did in the early 1800s, how did it get to look like this in between? It makes no sense. The story makes no sense, the dates don't add up. And then of course you've got the bombing, and we don't even know when that was, and then it managed to look like this in the 60s when it was being rebuilt after the war. It's crazy. So we've got early 1800s, 1900s, and then early 1940s. It's, you know, so they changed it and changed it back again. It really just doesn't marry up at all. So 1940s to 1960s, and this is what it's like today. Incidentally, if this is a sketch of the toll house in 1819, then you are now looking at a building of around 700 years old. I don't think so. What do you think? And just to top it off, although Bob never got back to me when I was asking him different questions about, I emailed him asking him where he got his information from about that story, but I found it in a chronological retrospect of the history of Yarmouth by William Finch Crisp. He says, 1756, September the 1st, naval engagement off Lowestoft between HMS Hazard and a French privateer, La Sabtile, carrying 12 guns and 86 men. After 6 hours, the Frenchmen struck off Winterton, and the next day, Sunday, the prisoners were landed and locked in jail. By undermining the prison wall, 14 broke out. Only 4 were retaken. I was so thrilled when I found this, because I thought, I've done it. I have got a date as to when that property was above ground. It's 1756. So, September the 1st, 1756, and Finch Crisp tells us, and the next day, Sunday, the prisoners were landed, which is September the 2nd, 1756. But on our current calendar, that date wasn't a Sunday, it was a Thursday. So what am I supposed to do with that? Is the whole story untrue? Is it a different calendar? I mean, this is what I mean by I've been going round and round in circles. So what have I actually learnt in the study of the Great Yarmouth Toll House Jail? It's all lies. I doubt there's a single brick in this wall that's original, and this wall is underground, by the way. And you can see, look at the state of it. How could you possibly work out what's original, what's not, what's been altered? I mean, did they actually build it like that for a laugh, just as a stage set? So, my advice, if ever you're visiting the Toll House Museum and they tell you stories of the torture, the ghosts, the witches, take a step back and ask yourself, are they really just trying to distract you from the real mystery? And charging you for it, because that toll house makes a fortune because of its age. It has ghost hunters in there. They charge £30 per person to spend a night in a cell. If nothing else, I think this counts as indisputable proof that dates have been fabricated to the extreme. And I think we've got a serious problem, people, because the majority of people out there don't have the mental capacity to see what's right in front of them. And I guess in the end, my only hope is that if I've been able to slowly come round from this hypnotic slumber, that others will too. And so have you. So I look forward to your comments, and I will say goodbye for now. But please do bear in mind any ideas on what these are, because if you don't come up with something, I think I might be able to, but I want to weigh it up first. Thank you for watching.